Bienvenidos, Hushamadid, and welcome UMGC learners from the CMIT-455 Section 6380 course for the spring 2021 semester. This is the CCNP ENCOR version 8 course curriculum, and in this packet tracer activity and tutorial, we're going to be taking a deep dive look at activity 20.2.2, where we will now be configuring WPA2 enterprise protection on our wireless LAN on the wireless LAN controller. In our last video, we talked about wired equivalent privacy, or WEP, and how the fact that WEP is simply really no privacy or security at all, and that's something that you would not want to use. And so we're going to be looking at Wi-Fi protected access 2, which is much more secure. And in fact, we're going to be doing Wi-Fi protected access 2 using a radius server. So let's go ahead and dive into the activity here. You can see the activity looks exactly like the previous activity, with the exception that we're now going to be configuring this radius server up here connected to router 1. We've got our addressing table. Background scenario, again, in objectives, we're going to be configuring WPA2 Enterprise, meaning we're going to be using that radius server, which will first authenticate the wireless LAN controller and then allow us to get authentication through its database. So let's come down here to part 1, where now we're actually going to be creating a new wireless or new VLAN interface on the wireless LAN controller. Now, this is something we didn't do in the previous activity as well. This had already been done for us. So this is going to be good to see. So let's pull up our admin PC and let's go ahead and pull up our web browser. And I'm going to give us a little bit more room with which to work here. In fact, let me adjust this over a little bit here, because as you're going to see, it helps us with the admin PC to have as much room as possible. Now, another quick note here, we're going to be using HTTPS, and please be patient, right? It's going to take a few seconds here for this activity to load the GUI in. So 192.168.200.254. And that's going to give us the wireless LAN controller login screen. And specifically, you're going to notice when I say admin Cisco 123, that it will take a few seconds. You can see the green light flickering away here because we're transferring a lot of data in terms of, packet tracers context. So we're going to wait here. Again, it's going to take a few seconds. Let's scroll down here and let's kind of tee up what we're going to be doing. So now remember, each wireless LAN requires a virtual interface on the wireless LAN controller. These interfaces are known as dynamic interfaces. And so you can see it did take a while for the GUI to pop up here. Again, it's Packet Tracer. It's an amazing tool, and we just need to be patient and we'll get to where it is we're going. All right. So where do we leave off here? So the virtual interface is assigned a VLAN ID, and traffic that uses the interface is going to be tagged as VLAN traffic. This is why connections between the access points and the wireless LAN controller of the router take place over trunk ports. All right, so we open up the browser. And let's go ahead and dive in here. We open up the browser for the desktop admin PC. So let's connect to the IP address of the wireless LAN controller over HTTPS. We did that. We use the login and username. Click on the controller menu. Now again, here, you'll notice I click on the menu, lots of green blinking, which is why I left right up here. I left it so we could see what's happening here. A lot of green blinking. We need to be patient. We're going to get that controller menu here in just a second. And again, we're going to click on the interfaces option on the menu on the left. So here you can see we've got some general information. We want the interfaces over here on the left-hand side. And what we're going to see is the default virtual interface and the management interface to which we are connected. Again, we're connected to the management interface, which is at 192.168.200.254. And again, here is sort of this default virtual interface that's just sitting here. Our VLAN identifier for the management interface just happens to be VLAN 1. And so we're okay with that. All right, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to click New, and I'm going to have to scroll over. You can see I'm kind of scrolling over to the right here. So I'm going to click on New. And again, we're going to be patient here. And in the upper right-hand corner, we see that new button. And we're going to enter the name of the new interface. Now, this is what was already done for us in the previous activity. If you remember, we saw that Wireless LAN 5. It was already there, but now we're going to put Wireless LAN 5, and we're going to configure the VLAN ID. Again, this is the VLAN that's going to carry the traffic for this wireless LAN that we're going to be creating here in a few steps. We're going to click on Apply. And this is going to take us to a configuration screen for the VLAN interface. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is configure this VLAN interface. And again, we're going to be very patient here. I know it might be a little frustrating, especially if you have a slower computer, but let's be patient. We're going to get that screen, and there is the screen we're looking for. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to configure it to use physical port 1. Now, the little note up here says multiple VLAN interfaces can use the same physical port because the physical interfaces are like dedicated trunk ports. All right, so we're going to go ahead and configure this to use, and give me just one second here. I'm just double checking. Yeah. Okay, so the interface address is the first thing that we're going to put in here, and the port number is going to be port number 1. And let's come down here and let's get our IP address entered in here. So 192.168.5.254. I'll hit Tab. You'll notice it doesn't autocomplete here like it does in our PCs. So we're going to have to put that in. And then our gateway is going to be that 192.168.5.1. So configure the interface to use physical port number 1. We did that right up here. Port number is going to be 1. And again, they act like trunk ports. We've got the addressing information in here. And then primary DHCP server. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because it will be the wireless LAN controller that is going to be serving as our DHCP server, not some other device that might be in the network, like a router, or possibly if that Radius server was a Windows server of some kind, it could also be providing DHCP services. So for the wireless LAN, we're going to be using 192.168.5.1 to serve up our DHCP information. All right, now we've got a quick note here that we're using a /24 network. The default gateway address is that address on router 1. The pool actually has been configured on the router. So I apologize. I assume we might be using the wireless LAN controller here. We are actually using the router. And if we were to take a look here, if we can jump on that router real quick, we should see our IP DHCP pool, and let's say show run pipe at the section DHCP, and let's see what we've got here. So there's our excluded address, right, which is the address we don't want DHCP to offer up, which is the router address, I'm assuming here. Show IP interface brief, and it is. It's the sub interface on the router. We're doing a router on a stick configuration here, it looks like. And you can see the pool name is just wireless clients. And there's the network definition, and we're going to give out that default router as part of that DHCP information. So again, I wanted to make sure I clarified what we're doing there with DHCP. And then the wireless LAN controller is going to be forwarding all DHCP requests to the router. All right, so now we're done in terms of what we're going to be configuring here for that interface. So let me go ahead and click Apply. And we'll click OK. And again, we're going to be very, very patient. And we're going to click Save Configuration so that the configuration is going to be in effect when the wireless LAN controller or the wireless LAN controller restarts. And again, we got to be very patient here. So there we go. We can see that everything looked good. Right up here is our save configuration. So not only do we apply things, we need to save the configuration. And I want you to think of this as what we're doing is we're saving the config from the running configuration to the startup configuration of the wireless LAN controller, right? So it's kind of the same thing we do with routers and switches when we're doing those types of configurations is the same thing we just did here. And again, it has brought us out to this screen. So now we see the default, or I should say the management and virtual interfaces. And now we have this wireless LAN 5 interface. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the wireless LAN controller to use the radius server. So from here, we're going to click on the security tab. Again, patience is key with this activity. And while we're waiting, it's going to use an external radius server to authenticate wireless LAN users. Individual user accounts with unique usernames and passwords can be configured. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And here's the point that I mentioned earlier. Before the wireless LAN controller can use that database of users on the radius server, it has to authenticate the WLC, the wireless LAN controller, to allow it access. And so that's what we're going to be doing here. So again, we're going to click on the new button right here, and we're going to allow that to open up the window so that we can enter the IP address of the radius server in. So let's go ahead and see what that is. 172.31.1.254, and I'll bring that down over here. So 172.31.1.254 is what we're going to be using for the IP address of the radius server. All right, so we click the new button. In the server IP address field, let's put in 172.31.1.254. Now, we need to be careful here that we follow the instructions. Radius server is going to authenticate the wireless LAN controller before it allows it to access that user account database that it's going to be storing. And it requires a shared secret value of Cisco 123. So shared secret, again, is in ASCII, and it's going to be capital CISCO 123. And we want to make sure we confirm that and we get that correct value in there, because if we don't get the correct value in there, we're going to be in all kinds of trouble. So now we're going to click apply. And I like the little note they put down here. Again, it's a packet tracer activity, right? We're trying to learn how to go through the wireless LAN controller, make these configuration changes, and familiarize ourselves with what would be required in sort of a simple configuration. So they're giving us simple passwords to use. Obviously, Cisco 123 is probably not the shared secret you're going to end up using. All right, so step number 3, we're going to create the wireless LAN. And so if you remember 20.2.1, this is kind of where we showed up in that activity, right? As we started with configuring the wireless LAN because we didn't have radius to configure, or the security for the radius server to configure, and we didn't have that virtual interface for VLAN 5, for SSID 5, wireless LAN-5 to configure. All right, so now let's go ahead and we're going to create a new wireless LAN. So we're going to click on the wireless LANs tab here at the top. Again, you can see the green triangle, upward facing triangle going bananas. And the wireless LAN that we're going to create, and again, we might have to slide to the right. We probably will have to in order to select new. And actually we don't. All right, so create new, we're simply going to click go, right? And then now we're going to get the profile information here for this wireless LAN so that we can go ahead and drop that configuration information in. And again, we look at the config information, we can see that it's going to be just about identical to what we did in the previous activity. So the type is going to be wireless LAN. Our profile, our profile name is going to be floor 2 employees, and the SSID is simply going to be SSID 5. Again, this is kind of old hat. If you did 20.2.1, we did sort of the same thing. Now the ID, we're going to make sure that corresponds to that interface that we had created earlier. Now, hosts will need to use this SSID to join the network, and that's great. We're going to click apply to apply those settings. And it says here that the ID is an arbitrary value. We configured it to 5 to be consistent. And so again, just like with sub interfaces on a router, right? You can use, gig 00 dot whatever is your number, .5, .50, .80, but you're going to align that with whatever that incap .1q statement is. And the same is true here, right? If we're using SSID 5 and we're using the virtual interface wireless LAN 5. This ID, while they say it's an arbitrary value, we want to make sure that it lines up with the number that we're using for the VLAN that we're using, the SSID number that we've got here, again, to make things easier down the road. Okay, so now the wireless LAN's been created. We can configure the features of the network. So we're going to click on enabled to make the wireless LAN functional. Now, this is probably the #1 step that learners overlook when either working with a wireless LAN controller, a physical one, or when working in Packet Tracer, because by default, the wireless LAN is not going to be enabled. So we're going to go ahead and click enable, and then they want us to choose the VLAN interface that will be used for the new wireless LAN. And so, excuse me. And so you can see we've got a security tab here. We've got the QoS policy. We've got policy mapping, and then we've got advanced. But right down here, it's going to be the interface. So we're not going to use the management interface. We're going to use Wireless LAN 5. All right. So let's make sure we've got everything that's good to go here. We're going to go to the Advanced tab, and we're going to be selecting Flex Connect. And if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be right down here. So Flex Connect local switching and Flex Connect local auth. And then we're going to click Apply. I'm just making sure we're not skipping anything here. And in fact, I haven't even looked down at the completion percentage, which is now at 44%. So we're going to click Apply, and so we're good there. So now we're going to get to the security portion, right? And this is where we're going to kick in the WPA2 policy, right? Which is going to be using that radius server instead of defining sort of a simple plain text pre-shared key that we would enter in from the client perspective. So let's give this a second here to sort itself out. All right, so instead of WPA2 pre-shared key, if we go to the security tab here, and it says layer 2 security, and actually let me make sure I don't, make sure I'm following along. Don't want to screw the activity up. So WPA2 is what we're going to be selecting from the drop-down box. Now, the parameters down here, remember when we did the WPA policy, we saw that we could do WPA encryption, but here we're doing WPA2, right? And you can see the option that they want us to pick down here is enable WPA2 policy. And we're going to click on WPA2 policy, and it's already selected. And then it says click 802.1x under authentication key management. And so instead of pre-shared key, we're going to pick 802.1x. And let's make sure. All right, so now we're going to click on the AAA servers tab. It's not asking us to click apply yet. So we click on the AAA servers, right? The authentication, accounting, and where are we at here? Okay, so there we are, and I'm just making sure we don't skip any steps here. So we're going to open the drop down next to server 1, right? And you can see we've defined, that's where we defined the radius server earlier. So now we're going to be selecting that as the server to which we're going to be authenticating to for the 802.1x protocol. And then we're going to click apply to enable this configuration. And we'll click OK, and you can see that our completion percentage has gone up to 55. And so that takes care of the wireless LAN controller using the radius server. Now it says configure a DHCP scope and SNMP. So while we're waiting for this, the wireless LAN controller offers its own internal DHCP server. Cisco recommends that the wireless LAN DHCP server not be used for high volume DHCP services. And it looked like we had configured the router to do that. However, in a smaller network, we're going to use the DHCP server to reach the lightweight access points. All right. So it should be connected to the wireless LAN GUI from the admin PC. We're going to click on the controller. And again, we're kind of waiting here. I think that applied. So we'll click on the controller tab. And this is going to then take us to the interfaces menu, or we're going to be clicking on the interfaces menu, and it's going to show us the interfaces that are available. And so we should see that Wireless LAN 5 interface that we had created earlier. So I click on interfaces, again, patience being the key here, and we should see the management interface, and we'll see those other interfaces that we created. And again, it's interesting. I thought that we would be using the router, but it looks like we want the wireless LAN controller to use its own DHCP server, which again, I initially thought we would be doing, but we didn't. So we've got some information to collect here. What interfaces are present? Well, that wireless LAN 5 we created, the management interface, the virtual interface that was just kind of sitting there waiting for us to see it. On the management interface, record the information. So here's your IP address. If we needed more information, I could click on the management interface, right? And here's where we're going to see the IP address, the mask, the net mask, the gateway, and the primary DHCP server for the management interface. And let's give it a second here to pop up, and then we'll answer those questions. And here is that information, right? So VLAN identifier is 1. There's the IP, /24, default gateway, no primary DHCP server. So we want the wireless LAN controller to use its own DHCP server to provide addressing to devices on the wireless management network, such as lightweight access points. And so we're going to enter the IP of the wireless LAN controller management interface as the primary DHCP server. And so let's go ahead and say, so again, so for the APs, this is what we're going to be using. And I was actually correct earlier on when we set that up for the wireless, the clients, right? So we're creating that DHCP pool for the clients earlier. This is going to be for the APs and any devices on the management network. So 192.168.200.254. All right, so we've got that set up, and let me make sure we put in that IP address. We're going to click apply, which is going to be up here. We're going to wait a few seconds, click OK. And in the left-hand menu, we're going to expand the internal DHCP server, and we're going to actually drop a little scope in here, right? So the range of addresses that we want to use. And here's that internal DHCP server option that we're going to be clicking here shortly. All right, so there we go. And you can see DHCP scope. And if we had any addresses that were being used, we would see those leases right there. So I click scope. Now, again, watch this green flashing triangle here, because we want to make sure we're very patient with that as it pulls this up. And so now you can see we've got sort of this, default scope dropped in here called day management, DHCP management. Well, we're going to click new and create a new DHCP scope. And again, we need to make sure that we're going to be patient here. We're going to name the scope, and then we're going to get into some SNMP. We're going to configure the host network. So here it is, scope name. So wired management, right? So this is for our APs and any other wired devices that might pop up. We're going to click apply on the new scope. And when the scope opens up for us here, after it's done, and again, we're kind of watching that green triangle to let us know when things should be finishing. We're going to put a range of addresses in. Looks like we're going to be using 10 addresses, 192.168.200 to 249. So we'll click on wired management. And this is where we're going to put our address pool range in. And let's put this up here. And we'll give this a second. And again, the activity is a little more comprehensive than the last activity we did, and that's because we've got sort of DHCP going. We've got the WPA2 with the 802.1x, 200.240, and then the ending address 192.168.200.249. And then the network is that 192.168.200.0. And it is a /24, 255.255.255.0. All right, so we could tweak the lease time maybe, but we're not going to worry about that. And the status is enabled. So we've got the information in there. Provide the values for network, network mask, and default router that we gathered up in step 1C. And again, if we didn't write that information down, we could come back up here and see that here is that sub interface on the router, excuse me, for the management LAN. So 192.168.200.1 would be that default router. So 192.168.200.1, and DNS servers, there are no DNS servers. So at this point, if we come back all the way down here, we should be good to go. So we're going to click Apply to activate that configuration. And then again, right, we've been manipulating the running config. So we want to save the configuration if the wireless LAN controller or when the wireless LAN controller ends up restarting. So again, we'll wait that out. Things look good. Let's click Save Configuration. I'll click OK. And again, you can see it's kind of churning away there. And so we'll give it a second. And successfully save the configuration. All right, so fantastic. So everything looks good there. Okay, so now, in fact, we should, theoretically, I should be able to come see if we've got allocated leases and that lightweight access point that they have on the screen there. We should see if that has picked up an IP address, and it's kind of saying that it should have. We could mouse over it in the topology, and whoops. And no IP address yet, but it should be picking one up. Let's come back to the PC. Okay, nothing yet. So we'll give it a second or two here. And it might not be. Yeah, I'm just kind of seeing here. Yeah, we'll give it some time to sort itself out. All right, so we'll configure SNMP. So we're going to go to the Management tab here, right? Because we want to make sure that any SNMP traps are getting sent to whatever our network management solution would be. And hopefully it's not SolarWinds in your case because of the issues that SolarWinds has been having lately with security. All right, so on the left-hand side, you can see we've got this SNMP tab here. So we're going to click on that. We're going to click on Trap Receivers, and we'll give it a second. And then we're going to create a new trap receiver, right? So we're going to identify who is going to receive these SNMP traps. So we'll click on New, and we're going to put a community string in here, which is giving us access to the server, letting it know that, hey, we know the community string that should be used for these traps. And then we'll put the IP address in here. And so here we go. Community name is going to be Wireless LAN _SNMP. The IP address is going to be 172.31.1.254. Our status is going to be enabled, and we're not going to do IPsec, so we'll click Apply. All right, so now we're going to connect hosts. So we're kind of in the final, excuse me, kind of in the final portion here, part 3. We're going to connect hosts to the network. So in the Packet Tracer PC Wireless Client app, and so we're going to come down here. And so again, I'm even going to click on Save Configuration here just to make sure. We weren't asked to do that, but not a bad idea. So we're going to click on the wireless host, and let's give ourselves some room with which to work here on this wireless host. All right, so configuration was saved. And we're going to go to the PC Wireless, right? And let's drag this up a little bit here. All right, so we're going to go to the PC Wireless, and it's going to ask us to click on the Profiles tab. And you can see nothing is here right now. We'll give it a second because we're going to be connecting up here shortly. Click on the Profiles tab and then click, we're going to click on New. So we're actually going to create a new profile. So we're going to enter a profile name, WLC space net. All right, we'll click OK. And we're going to highlight the wireless network name. And there it is, SSID 5. All right, it did show up. It's tiny. I apologize. There's no way I can make that much bigger, but you can see SSID 5, excuse me, is going to show up. And click Advanced Setup. So we're going to click down here in the Advanced Setup. And you can see we've got the two modes. We've got the infrastructure mode and the ad hoc mode. We're interested in the infrastructure mode. And so we're going to verify the SSID for the wireless LAN is present. We're going to click Next. And it is. SSID 5 is there. We're going to click Next. And here's where we get into... and hold on, I'm just reading here to make sure. Verify the DHCP server setting is selected and obtain network. Again, so DHCP, get the address auto-magically. And we're going to click Next. And before we do that, let's come down here and let's mouse over. Let's make sure that the access point. All right. So So fantastic. So it does have the connection information, and you can see gig 00, it did pick up that DHCP address. Again, we've got to be patient here with these wireless LAN activities. So I'm going to click next down here. And security, right? So this is where we're going to pick WPA Enterprise, WPA2 Enterprise, and Radius, right? So that's where we're going to use the Radius server option. So let's drag it down here to WPA2 Enterprise, and we're going to click Next. And now, authentication. And let's see what they want us to type in here. So it wants us to just simply put in the login name for the user as user1. It wants the password to be user1pass. And remember, this is going to be case sensitive. The server name is optional, so it doesn't look like we're going to have to do anything there. Verify the profile and click Save. So let's check this again. So peep user1, we drop the password in, verify the profile settings and click Save. And again, I'm clicking on these here. There's nothing we can choose there. So we'll click, oops, sorry. Yeah, we're going to click Next. Verify the profile settings. So here are all the profile settings. We're going to click Save. And then we're going to select the WLC net profile to connect to. So we'll click Connect, and we're going to give it a second here. And there's our SSID 5. So hold on, select the WLC net profile. And actually, let me go back to profiles here. So we're going to select the WLC net profile, and we're going to connect to network. Whoops, I want a WLC net, and we're going to click Connect. Make sure I've got this right. Profile, connect to network button. And it doesn't look like it's allowing me to connect here. Let's make sure we've got this right. So we see SSID 5, but that's not where we're at. So we're going to select the WLC Connect profile. So here's the profiles. There's our WLC net. And when I click Connect, it's interesting. It moves me back to the default profile. After a brief delay, you should see the wireless host connect. And so see, we are not seeing that here. So we've got something. Now it's interesting because the activity is showing 100% complete. So the configuration is correct. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that it seems to bounce back. You'll notice I highlight it. And if I click Connect, it drops me back to the other profile that's there. So hold on one second here. Yeah, and the wireless host is clearly not receiving the information it's supposed to. So let me click on that. I'm going to see if I can delete that. Can't get rid of the default profile. So let's try this. If we're connected here, let's refresh things here on the. So we're going to refresh and of course, I click refresh and then it comes up. So now let's come over to profiles, click here, click Connect, and it goes away. So that's interesting. So it looks like you've got to click refresh to get it to connect up. So now let's mouse over the host and see, did we get, and take a look at that. We picked up via DHCP off the router, which is providing for the wireless clients in the network. We do have it. So even though we kind of saw some funky behavior there, let's now go ahead and perform our connectivity testing, right? So here we are on the wireless host. Let's drag the window over here for the wireless host. Actually, let's put it way up here in the top so that I can bring it all the way down to test connectivity. And let's get on the command line prompt. So ipconfig-all is going to show me, did I get my DHCP address? I certainly did. There it is right there. You can see our DHCP server, which is also our default gateway, is listed right there. What network should the address be in? Again, it's going to be in the wireless clients network. And so we kind of talked that through as we were configuring things as well. Can I ping the default gateway? So let's give it a try. Can I ping 192.168.5.1? And I have 45.1 there, and that's not going to work. So let me ping the correct address, which is my default gateway, which ironically was who was responding up here saying, hey, I can't get to that destination. Sorry. So we do have access to the default gateway. Let's mouse over switch 1, and let's get switch 1's address, which is 200.100. So can I ping 192.168.200.100? Can I ping the switch? And can I ping the radius server? And you can see here the request timed out. Let's make sure I've got that right address here. 200. And of course, we just got a little nervous there, but again, some ARP packets probably. So 200.100, we've got connectivity there. Can I ping the radius server? Let's mouse over the radius server. And again, the key takeaway in this activity is going to be patient. So 172.31.1.254. And I can ping the radius server. Success indicates full connectivity within this topology. Some radius reflection questions. Uses a dual authentication mechanism. What two things are authenticated by the radius server? Why do you think it's necessary? Well, the wireless LAN controller is authenticated by the radius server. And I talked about that when we were doing that configuration, and then the user as well. Why is it necessary? To make sure that both of those are being authenticated. It's sort of, think of it as like two-factor authentication almost, but we're talking about two separate devices here to make sure that not only is the client done and configured properly and authenticated, but so is the wireless LAN controller being authenticated. And what are the advantages of WPA2 Enterprise over the pre-shared key? Well, obviously, you have to have the client configured on the radius server. If I pull the radius server up, we're not just dealing with a key anymore, right? We're dealing, where are the services at here? And where are the services? Network collector, radius accounting. No, is it going to let me see it? Because I thought we would have the services tab, and maybe I'm not looking in the right spot. Yeah, I thought we would have a services tab here that would show me the configuration for what had been done, but I don't see that here. And again, the AAA accounting, we're not doing the accounting piece, so we'll go ahead and just leave it at that. But again, the advantages are we're not using a pre-shared key, which if everybody or anybody knows your pre-shared key, they're going to be able to get in. This is going to ensure that on a user-by-user basis, that we're authenticating who's getting into the who's getting onto our wireless network. And again, this leads to the conversation of, well, what about guests who come in, right? Well, we would create a guest wireless LAN network that did have pre-shared keys, and then we would probably have QoS policies on that network as well that kind of throttled the amount of traffic that is allowed to use that guest network, because we don't want them downloading, watching YouTube videos and all kinds of bandwidth intensive things that might impact our production wireless LAN. All right, well, that is going to do it for this activity 20.2.2, where we configured a WPA2 Enterprise wireless LAN on the wireless LAN controller. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.